The market for cyber insurance is on track to triple in size in the next 5 years to $7.5 billion. Consulting firm PwC says insurers and reinsurers are charging higher prices for protection from cybersecurity issues, including hacking. They're also putting ceilings on potential losses. That could have the effect of deterring companies from buying cyber insurance at all at a time when there have been massive security breaches, including the recent one at adultery website Ashley Madison. Claudiu Popa is CEO of cybersecurity consulting firm Informatica Corp. We talked earlier, and I asked him if he was surprised by the growing size of cyber risk insurance pools.
You know what? I'm not surprised. They've been growing year over year for the past decade. We are seeing tremendous impact on the part of Canadian organizations, North American organizations that cannot be prevented, and so they have to deal with the accountability, they have to deal with their responsibility vis-a-vis the information owners, and so that kind of protection is going to become the default in the years to come.
So we know, I know you're not an insurance expert, but the insurance generally works by trying to price the risk. And to do that, you need to be able to measure the probability. So whether that's weather patterns or any other kind of, vehicle accident rates. In this case, how does the insurance industry, how hard is it, do you think, for them to price the risk of something that is so fast moving and fast changing?
That's an excellent question, because typically insurance companies will work with experts to gauge the impact and the risk and the application of the threats. So when you're looking at a particular sector, a particular industry that is facing security threats or even privacy threats, you're looking at the value of those assets and the cost of replacing them. Those values have been steadily growing over the past few years, and we're seeing that practically every organization at every level has some kind of financial impact if and when those kinds of breaches do occur.
So one of the problems, of course, we have is we know what the cost to a company is to ward off cyber attacks and even, I guess, mitigate if they do happen. But take a big data breach, targets customers, a whole bunch of information has been disseminated or breached. It may be years before I know that I am the subject of that attack. Can I go back then and sue Target? And how does Target manage, how does a business manage that kind of future unknown risk?
It's incredibly difficult, and so far what we're seeing is that a lot of the class action lawsuits that are cropping up every time there's a high profile breach that takes place, a lot of those tend to price in the theoretical impact that occurs, let's say today, versus what we discover that impact will have been in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's really the way you should look at it, because organized crime groups that do carry out these attacks, they're very patient. They aggregate the information, they disseminate it, they package it, they find different ways to monetize it and to sell it and to profit from it. And those ways do not all impact consumers. They don't all impact victims in the same way, and certainly not at the same time. So packaging a lot of that risk and a lot of that financial impact up front is a good way to, one, show that you understand the impact in the long run, and two, actually get organizations to realize the importance of protecting information security.
Of course, one of the reasons why a business would be thinking this way is business continuity. You don't want any operational kind of interruption, and so businesses care a lot about that. What do you tell companies that say, okay, I'm willing to go the extra mile, get the software, get the expertise, get the insurance, but what if the grid goes down? It's well beyond my control, but it will shut me down just as surely as anything else. What do they do about the fact that governments may not be up to speed on this stuff?
Well, there's a number of factors that are under the control of the organization, a number of systemic infrastructure-related factors that are completely out of the control of companies. For some of those, you can only go so far using business continuity planning, using disaster recovery, using information protection, and in those cases, you really have to build your scenarios well ahead of time, understand what those possible situations can be, and instead of necessarily throwing money at insurance, throw it at redundancy, throw it at replicating those systems and ensuring that the data will remain available regardless of where the breach or the downtime occurs.
We had this most recent, very high-profile cyber breach at Ashley Madison. What we understand, at least from reports, is that the actual code might have been creaky, that there might have been some understanding that there was vulnerability there. Do you think most businesses know that they're vulnerable and maybe are a little too optimistic about whether something bad will happen?
I think most businesses are very careful as far as testing too much or looking too far into their own vulnerabilities, partly because there's a certain amount of accountability that comes with that. There's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with finding out that you have vulnerabilities, and suddenly you have to spend an inordinate amount of money that you were not budgeting for to fix a lot of these things. And secondly, the skills to do those kinds of analysis are simply very scarce. It's not that they're not there, but they are fairly rare. And so, for example, when we work with insurance companies to conduct risk assessments on their behalf, and we try to articulate the fact that a smaller organization has perhaps a lower exposure to risk than a larger one, it takes a certain amount of skill and a certain amount of bench strength to be able to articulate that risk and understand the potential impact of a breach.
All right, we've got to leave it there, Claudiu. We appreciate your time today.
You're welcome.
Claudiu Popa is CEO of Informatica Corporation.